Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to our show today. Today is Sunday and we are live at 11 a.m.
Well, let's do a little recap of what
Sure.
we talked about last week. Dear brothers and sisters, last week we talked about the importance of the 4 kinds of communication styles.
Yeah, so we touched a little bit on the communication styles and how they're developed and how they're used on our day-to-day basis with our loved ones, family members, and coworkers, and how our communication style can not only impact ourselves, but the relationships we have with others. So some of the communication styles that we did address last week were, the aggressive communication style, passive communication style, passive-aggressive, as
Yes.
well as assertive communication.
Definitely. As we talked about it, when we stated that, assertive communication style shows to be the most effective and probably the best form of communication style amongst, parents, children, family members, because it's a very healthy form of communication style. And
Definitely.
in doing that, it's like me being able to listen to you whenever you have to talk, right? If I was passive aggressive or if I was aggressive, then I would just say no to you and, just get my message
Yell
across.
Or use sarcasm, yes.
Yeah.
And then we also talked about how the assertive communication style also creates healthy boundaries and communication as well. So when you're feeling upset, to set your boundaries, when to say no in a healthy manner without becoming overly upset or, kind of keeping it in and being very passive about it and then bursting at a later time.
Definitely. And I think even in today's show, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and discuss the importance of, as we did the 4 types of communication style, today we want to go ahead and discuss the importance of the 5 love languages.
Correct. And so we did kind of mention that in our program last week that we wanted to address that this week, just because I don't think in our community so many people know about the 5 love languages, and we got so much feedback about our show from last week that we thought, it'd be a really good idea to go into the love languages and talk about what are the 5 different love languages, and do we all have the same love language? And if we don't, do we misread somebody else's love language and feel like, hey, their love language is not the same as mine, so that must mean they don't love me.
Definitely. And like you said again, Mamajan, that last week, we were trying to get this topic into our discussion as
Try to
well,
fit
but
it in.
because of, time restraint, and we had a great conversation pertaining to the 4 communication styles, and we had callers call in and give their thoughts, inputs, and they had some questions.
Yeah.
So that took more time. So to say the least, for anybody that's watching, please remember you can give us a call as we go through the 5 love languages, and or what you can do is, as always, is give your questions via Facebook. I think we'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions.
Definitely, and just be patient with us since we do check our Facebook, but we tend to check it during breaks or towards the end of the show to answer the
Yes.
questions. So if you feel like you have a very urgent question and we're not, taking the time to look down, just please go ahead and give us a call. You don't have to state your name if you don't want to. You can be an anonymous caller, and we will be more than glad to talk to you.
Definitely. And we want this to be as comfortable as possible for you guys. And not just that, but we want you guys to know that this is basically a part of your show as well. We want you to take ownership. We want you to understand that anything that you want to ask us, any inputs that you have could not just benefit us, but even the audience that's listening to our programs as well. So I think that would be very important to understand and realize as well.
Definitely. So we'll go ahead and kind of jump into our topic for today. As we mentioned earlier, what we're going to be overviewing is the 5 love languages, which was actually developed by Dr. Gary Chapman. And I think the first love language that we want to go ahead and start off with is going to be words of affirmation. So we'll have 5 different love languages, and we'll go through each one of them and describe what each love language is and how a person behaves if they have that love language style.
Definitely.
So words of affirmation, let's go ahead and kind of delve into that one.
Sure. So words of affirmation, right? Number 1 is verbal compliments. Now the question is, does anybody within the household, do you guys ever compliment each other, right? Being a husband and wife, I think it's one of the most powerful communicators between 2 couples, especially when they love each other, when they are together. It's one of the most powerful keys to our relationship is by complimenting each other verbally.
Yeah. And not just complimenting one another and providing like support, but also encouraging. So really using encouragement in times of needs. If your partner is struggling or a family member in your life is struggling, or even if it's a friend, being able to sit and listen and then encourage them towards positive things to create hope for them. Making sure that you're there for them in that way. So those are some words of affirmation when you're being there for them, you're providing support for them, and you're helping them understand that they have someone to count on.
Definitely, and also the importance of also doing some verbal compliments and giving verbal compliments is to appreciate the other partner as well.
Definitely.
For me, if I'm coming up and telling you, well, thank you so much, for taking this into consideration, or I'm very happy that you were able to, do. Let's say you were able to make me something, even though that you were tired, very tired coming from work, knowing that you came from an 8-hour shift, from work, and then you came home and you cooked, versus somebody being at home who's there. Let's say for myself, let's say if I was at home and I wasn't doing anything, and then you come home and you just made me food, and I'm like, thank you so much, honey, for making food for me. Something like that is very powerful, And
the beautiful part about that is when you do something like that, like let's, for example, go along with Willie John's example of him coming home and me coming home after a long day of work and still going out of my way to do something kind for him, right? Like cooking. That him seeing that causes him to see that act of kindness and then want to reciprocate it, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how, verbal compliments work. When somebody says something nice to you, you automatically want to return the gift.
Definitely.
Compliment.
Definitely.
So it creates a really good relationship between the two people. It's almost like a give and take that, is pretty equal.
Definitely. And it has to be, right? Because when you're verbally speaking to somebody, I think more than action as well, even when you are talking to someone who you really appreciate, or somebody that you really adore, or you love, like your spouse, your parents, your children, it plays a big impact on their life, and not just that, on both of your lives. And knowing that you're always there for them, and you will always get compliments back from the other individual as well.
Definitely. So the next one that we want to touch base on in words of affirmation is also the kind of words you're using, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just about you using kind words and saying, I appreciate you, I love that you're spending time with me, you're so supportive, you're so hardworking, but it's also the kind of tone of voice you use. So if I turn to Willie and use like a very contradicting tone of voice and saying like, I appreciate you, you're so great, my tone of voice doesn't match with my words, right? It makes it sound like I'm really angry, and I don't even mean.
You're passive aggressive, like we go back to our, or you're aggressive. Like we were talking about the 4 types of communication style. That means that she's an aggressive person, where she's or she's passive aggressive because she's faking it, but at the same time her body language and her verbal complementation, tone of voice is not matching. So for that, I know something is wrong, and I know there's something going on where. Something there that's I probably have said something to upset you, or it's because you're probably fed up or something. So something is wrong.
Yeah. So you gotta make sure that when you are sharing kind words in your words of affirmation with the person that you care about, you want to make sure your tone of voice matches what you're trying to say, because like Willie John said, body language, there's so many other cues besides just our, verbal expressions that indicate how the person may feel. And if my tone of voice doesn't match with the words I'm saying and kind of with the mood of the setting of what I'm saying, then it's very hard to believe.
It's very hard to believe, and for myself, it would be very hard to understand, and not just that, but even as an individual, I'll interpret it very differently.
Sure.
And I'll say, I'll think of it like, well, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you using this tone of voice with me, or what's going on? There's something
going on. So you would feel
on.
very confused, because you would
I'd
think
be very
like
confused.
You're saying one thing, but your tone of voice
is something else, and your body language is showing something else. And that's trying to use kind words is very important, because that really allows the individual to know that either my husband or my spouse is being very kind to me or very gentle to me, right?
Definitely. So that was our little role play for today for you guys for that one. So something else that we also want to touch base on is, in words of affirmation, forgiveness is key.
Definitely.
So both partners, and again, the 5 love languages tend to be used with couples and partners, but you could honestly use it with anyone. I've used this with even parents and their children, where I have them sit down and I talk to them about the kind of love language they have. So even though we're focusing a lot on couples, I just want to again remind everyone that this could be used with anyone in your family or even with your friends.
Definitely. And just to add on to that too, words of forgiveness is very important because as human beings, none of us are perfect. And if I said something, to hurt you, it's my job and my duty as a husband to apologize. And number one, I have to know, why I made you upset. And then number two, I have to come to you and tell you, hey, I'm really sorry for saying this or for doing this or taking a certain action, for hurting you.
Yeah.
And that can be done, it's vice versa. She, if she said something to me where it's something that hurts me, she has to understand and realize that, oh wow, like I hurt my husband, and then she would do the same. And this works with everybody too,
Right.
No matter who it is in the relationship. It's either your parents, your brother, your in-laws, your friends.
And with forgiveness, you can't erase something that happens in the past. You have to move forward and make a decision whether or not you're going to forgive that person. And remembering that, part of forgiving is also, reinitiating trust. And in order for you to have a good relationship with anyone in your life, you need to be able to have that trust in that relationship.
Definitely.
So forgiveness becomes a very important key, and it's important for you to sit down and try to, one, understand why the mistakes have happened, and sincerely, accept the apology from the other person, and then work on how to create a plan or how to discuss things differently next time so these mistakes don't reoccur.
Definitely. And not just that, but forgiveness is the way to love. We can choose to live, today free from failure of yesterday, but forgiveness is not a feeling. It is a commitment that you have to make.
Yeah.
It is also shows to show mercy, not to hold, offense upon others or the other person. So you don't want to hold grudges against anybody, right? Because the more grudges you hold against an individual, the more negative thoughts you'll have. The
Right.
more we say shaitan whispers in the ear, and it makes it worse.
Right.
Without even speaking to your partner or without speaking to the person that you want to talk to. When it comes to forgiveness, you have to forgive the individual,
Yeah.
because if you don't, it can get really worse for
And
for both.
as we even talk about it, we always bring in Islamic perspectives into our discussions, and even if we look at it through an Islamic perspective, like forgiveness is such a big part of our deen. Being able to forgive somebody and turn the other cheek and give more, chance to those individuals, as long as we know that their apologies are sincere and that they really ask forgiveness from a deep place from their heart and promise not to repeat their steps.
Definitely.
Even our faith is that in our God, whenever we turn to Him and we ask for forgiveness, like there's always that opportunity to be forgiven.
Definitely.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
So when we can act in so many different ways and ask God for forgiveness, we have to remember that we should be able to treat one another in that way too.
Absolutely. And then the same thing, falling back with words of affirmation is that we want to use humble words with one another. It's something that keeps you humble. It keeps the person humble, and it just keeps the relationship very modest when it comes to husband and wife. When it comes, when the relationship is with with your friends, families. I think we'll just keep it within you and I, because I think it would be easy to relate versus extending it out to more
Different
people.
relationships.
Yeah, but you can definitely use it with other individuals as well, and in the same style and the same platform as well.
Yeah, and so the reason why we're focusing on humble words, because part of words of affirmation, that love language, part of that is being humble. So let's go ahead and say, like, we'll do another example. Part of being humble is, stopping yourself from making demands of your partner that may make your partner feel uncomfortable, right? So, for example, a demand that I could make of Willie John sometimes, and I'm just going to make up an example because I can't think of something that we do, but like demanding you to, help me out with something, right? But not even saying help me with this, but go and do something like this, right? So if I demand that from you, you may feel like, whoa, like, you haven't asked me if I'm free, you haven't asked me if there's something else I'm working on, you're just expecting me to do something without checking in with me.
Yeah.
And so it's so important for us to be humble and say, hey, how are you doing? Are you busy today? Do you think you can assist me with this thing? So making it more of a request than a demand.
Yeah, definitely. It becomes more of when one partner demands something from the other partner, it kind of becomes more of like you demanding something from your child or from your kid. So and
a
not
power
doing that.
differential.
It's a power differential. What a lot of people mistakenly does in relationship is that this is how they use it. What I've seen traditionally within our community is that because there's also a big age difference.
Yeah.
So I've seen, a lot of people, when it comes to husband and wife, a lot of the husbands do, directly tell the wife what to do, because there's always, what I've seen is 7 to 15 year age difference between a husband and a wife, right? With our generation, with the younger generation, or anybody that's within 40 years and younger, they've married people, majority folks within their age range, and I see a different dynamic there.
Yeah.
I see them asking, just like you said earlier, was if there's a husband or a wife, they'll always talk to each other and say, hey, what's your plan looking like today? Are you free? What are you doing at the moment? Can you help me out with this?
Yeah.
So there's always a compromise in that sense.
And it's so beautiful when you do that in a humble way, when you use a request instead of a demand, because you're expressing your love in that kind of way, right? Because when you're demanding something, there's almost this automatic belief of, well, this is how I want it and this is how it's going to happen, so I'm placing this onto you.
Yeah.
But when you're doing a request, you're doing an expression of love, right?
Yeah.
Because you're saying, hey, I'm struggling right now, I'm not able to keep up with some things, or maybe I need some personal assistance, and I'm reaching out to you in a way of love and seeking assistance from you.
Definitely. And one of the other things I think it's very important that people should know is that if I was to communicate with you, it's important that I use, words of affirmation in front of others too.
Definitely.
To say, thank you very much, honey. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
or
you're
thanks,
very
hon.
important to me.
So, sometimes it becomes difficult for folks or people to use affirmation words with their loved ones or with their partners around others. They, to a certain limit, you have to be mindful of what kind of words you're using, or
and the
what
culture you're in.
the culture you're in, or what you're doing. I know what I've noticed is that even between husband and wife, even one of the love signs is affection, and physical touch. Sometimes people, they go overboard, where because of the the culture that we're raised in, a lot of majority consensus usually what I've understood from majority consensus is that they don't like public affection, especially physical public affection amongst one another. So you have to be mindful in that sense. So but other than that, there's nothing wrong when telling your spouse, thanks, hon.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with that, and that shows appreciation. And
Sure.
even in front of others, what ends up happening in the long term is that they'll realize that how much you really respect and love your partner, and for that they'll also respect and love your partner, because they'll respect, not love, but I don't know about that part. But what ends up happening is that if you don't appreciate or if you don't respect your partner, eventually that individual will not respect your partner either, and that has happened.
Definitely. And so some tips that we want to give away for those people who, may recognize this specific language, the words of affirmation, as, their love language, something that you can do if you're thinking to yourself right now and saying, well, I don't know, how to appreciate my partner in front of people. Whether you're a guy or a girl, I suggest for you to write down a list of the best characteristics and traits of your partner. So whether it's he's really hardworking, he, always tries the best for us, he makes sure he's healthy for us, or she, goes out of her way, she makes, great, amazing food, whatever she does or he does, make a list of those things. That way, when the time does come and you want to share with your partner what you appreciate about them, or you want to share with somebody outside of your relationship, then you already have a list of traits that you've already thought up about, and then you can share those.
Definitely. And it's always important to really use words of affection, no matter what. It's very powerful and it's very important. Now let's go ahead and let's jump into the second love language,
Sure.
which is the quality, the quality time that you spend with your partner.
Yeah.
When we talk about quality time, traditionally as Afghans, what I've noticed is that when we talk about quality time, we mean, being able to do something, physically, whether, like taking out or going to, for instance, me
Taking me out to dinner.
taking out you to dinner, that shows a form of, having quality time with you, which is true. But at the same time, number one, it's important that we talk about togetherness.
Definitely.
So
something that we want to talk about quality time is not just, sitting in front of the TV and watching a show together.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm saying that that's not what it is because you're not focusing on each other, right? You're focusing on a screen, you're watching the show, and it might be great. It might be a great way of relaxing from a long day of whatever kind of stress that you've been through, but you're not really spending, quality time with each other where you can turn to each other and talk about, hey, how was your day? How are you doing? Let me do a check-in with
Definitely.
you. So learning ways of being together in a way where you're engaging with one another, where you're sharing with one another, where you're checking in with one another.
Definitely. And then also the other importance of quality time is that, like Lumbajan stated, is that you and your partner sitting down together, sitting across each other and giving
Facing
your
each other.
full on, togetherness, being there at the moment, making eye contact, having a good plan, even on a daily basis, even if you spend an hour together where you're sitting down and facing each other and talking about how your day went, and it would be great. And reason why I say that is that I sometimes get, when I go out and sometimes when I give talks, one of the problems or one of the barriers that a lot of some men tend to have is that because they're so overwhelmed or they get so busy at work, they always say, how do you manage your work schedule? So I always talk to them, and number one thing that I always tell them is that how often do you give time to your spouse? They say, I give them time, maybe an hour, 2 hour a day, and then within that hour or two, I ask them, well, whatever you do with them, the number one thing I always ask is your phone away from you? Usually they say no, because I get called, so it's so I'm in and out. So I always tell them, I say, listen, even if it takes half an hour to an hour max, just give your spouse an hour of your time. Take your phone and put it away somewhere. Don't pick it up. Just give that 1 hour time to your spouse. Just discuss the importance of what happened today. Find out how she's doing, how the kids were, how the plan, what does the day look like tomorrow?
Yeah.
Does she, does she need help? She probably wants to know how your day went as well. So as long as you give her that 1 hour, I told him, I was like, I guarantee you, she will not bug you anymore for the rest of the day, because that is all she wants, and hopefully that's all, you know.
And so, something that Willie John mentioned is it's so important to learn how to schedule your, your day, whether it's important meetings you're having or, those phone calls you have to do. And something that we really have tried to get into the habit of, alhamdulillah, I think we have been doing that lately, is if you have important phone calls that, you might have to answer at home, schedule them during your drive time. Nowadays, we all have cars that have Bluetooth, right? So you can hook up your phone to the Bluetooth in the car, and before you start driving, call the people that you need to call and talk to them while you're sitting in traffic. So there you go, that 30 minutes, that 20 minutes of a conversation that you need to have, you'll do during traffic time, and you won't bring it home. Yeah. So just, kind of being a bit more mindful of the free time that you have outside the home and scheduling your phone calls during that time.
Definitely.
Because part of quality time is being able to come home and having a quality conversation with your spouse. So whether you're the wife or the husband, being able to sit with your spouse and just constantly be able to make good eye contact with them, be able to understand your partner's body language. Are they stressed? Are they relaxed? Are they worried about something? Are they scared of something? Asking them typical questions like, what happened today? Who did you see? Where did you see them? Like being really interested, not like you're interrogating them, but allowing your partner to discuss what they have done throughout the day, the way they want to, and listening without interrupting them and saying, okay, make it short, or I have to go, like withholding yourself from cutting it short and really being present there for that conversation.
Definitely. And these are very important, because at the same time, being able to listen to your partner is very important. And the other important factor of it is that when you listen to your partner, you're starting to learn things from them as well on a day-to-day basis, right? No matter what it is as human beings, you have to be able to learn at least something new on a day-to-day basis. And I guarantee, if we sit down with our partners, and usually this happens too, is that there's a lot of folks who also believe that if my partner doesn't know much, it's either the husband or the wife. So there's always that problem, and we see a disconnect there within a relationship amongst husband and wife. But they tend to forget that they both complete themselves. Even Islamically, your partner is your half of your deen. So for that, you have to sit with them and try to give them time and give them appreciation, and it makes it a lot easier in that sense.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. And then just also focusing on not just what's being said, and I feel like we're repeating this in all the other love languages that we've been over, but really focusing on also body language, because body
Definitely.
language can sometimes be, can say so much, but if we're not really focusing on our partner and being present, then those are signs that we can miss. So we might be like, looking at our phones or watching TV or doing something else and like saying like, oh yeah, I'm listening to you, honey, and like I hear what you're saying, but if we're not looking at them, making direct eye contact, their body language may be looking super tense, or maybe their body language is indicating that they're angry, but because we're not focusing on them, we can't tell.
Definitely. And then also, when we are trying to have quality time with our partners, it's important. Number one, it's important to listen to your partners and give them time. And number two, it's also important to know that you yourself are able to talk to them, easily. And what I really want to discuss and pinpoint here is that you have to be able to, learning how to talk to your partner, because what has happened in relationships. I remember one time I had a husband and wife who were in a relationship, They have children, and they've been together for about 11 years. But then I still see a disconnect among the husband and the wife. Reason why that is that the wife, is, wanting more time. She wants to spend more time with the husband. But what I have learned to realize when I sat down with the husband was that the husband was a little bit slow with communication style.
Okay.
He was also shy with not knowing how to communicate in a healthy manner with
Sure.
his wife. And then when I went back and kept asking him about his past history and how his parents' relationship was, he indicated that, he grew up without a father. His father passed away when he was 2, so he really didn't have a male role model within the household that can, that can show him healthy form of communication style, how the husband and wife should have. So for him, it was basically he comes home, he goes to work, he comes and eats, and that's it.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing he knows. So I had to sit with both the husband and the wife, and I had to, get the husband to start, having those difficult conversations, because previously he wouldn't sit and tell his wife how pretty she is, or how her day was going, or even plan things out with her. So what I did for them was I created a plan where I told the husband, I said, I want you to at least take out your spouse, your wife, at least once every 2 weeks, and
As a date night,
or have a day, a Sunday, like 2-3 hours with your kids, with the whole family, and then also, a Saturday or so, go out and take out your wife, because you need time alone with your spouse. And in doing that, what he told me was that he usually has a harder time conversating during the moment, he's with her wife,
yeah.
and he doesn't know what to ask her. So what I told him was very simply, I said, get a piece of paper before you go, ask questions that you would want to ask her, and then I told the wife, I said, when you guys are meeting or when you guys have a conversation going, allow him to look at the paper and ask you a question.
Sure.
And she, and then they compromised and they did that. And then I remember a month later, the wife, the husband both came much happier, and then even the wife was a lot happy. She was like, this is working, this is great. She's actually asking me questions, and then with female biology, as we know, it's they tend to be social creatures where they enjoy talking and they enjoy conversating with people. Men are usually not wired that way, and for that, I had to tell the husband and the wife, how to work with each other in that
And
form.
so what we're discussing about there even is the personality types. So what I'm hearing
Definitely.
you say is the wife was more talkative versus the male partner was kind of more on the quieter side and maybe more.
Yeah, he was very quiet. He was
within.
very guarded. He wouldn't even talk to other men.
Yeah.
It was that difficult for him.
But that's
communicating.
something we also have to look at is not just personality types, but also how men are raised in our culture. Not just the Afghan culture, but just the patriarchal culture in general. So whether we look at any society, when we look at the way men are raised, most of the times men are not allowed to express emotions, right? They're not taught how to express emotions. This is why we see, girls having a better way of communicating and problem solving versus we see a lot of boys in kindergarten and early preschool days fighting, right? That's how they solve their problems
Yeah.
because from an earlier age on, they're not taught how to verbalize emotions and how to verbalize that they're feeling mad or sad or upset about something or even jealous, right? And so what I'm hearing in your example of this couple is even that, like, how is he supposed to at this age express his emotions or what he thinks or how he feels with his spouse when his whole life he has never been taught to do that?
So yeah, and the other thing I think what
And
made it
express
difficult
that.
was that he just didn't have a difficult time with his wife, but he had a harder time with other male people in the community too, because he wouldn't be able to go out and talk to them.
Yeah.
And then the second part is that he didn't have a father figure.
Yeah.
His father passed
And-
away too, so he was the only guy in the house. So it was very difficult for him
Right.
not knowing how to really.
Well, and that's so important because
Speak.
we always talk about the environmental impact, right? And so in this example, since he didn't have a father, there was really no male role model for this individual to look up to and be able to learn from. And so, I know we kind of like went really deep into this one, but those are some examples of, what a person who has a quality time love language would behave like.
Definitely.
And what they would really, find important in their relationship. So they look for a partner who will be able to spend quality time with them, where they're making, eye contact, being present, being mindful, really listening with their ears and responding in an appropriate way.
Definitely. And now we're going to move on and talk about, quality, activities that a husband and wife should do. The importance of this is that it's important that no matter a spouse, let's say a wife doesn't want to do a certain thing that the husband enjoys doing, or the husband or the wife enjoys doing something which the husband does not enjoy doing. You got to be able to compromise. And a part of this is that you got to be able to sacrifice and be interested in each other's interests. And that makes it a lot easier, because then you're allowing yourself to learn more about your partner.
Yeah.
In relationships, there's been also another form of barrier that we've seen, or a challenge in certain couples, is that two couples are not interested in each other's hobbies. And not being interested in each other's hobbies, they don't even give time to each other to be able to understand one another. And that has also become problematic in the long term. So we always ask that if you can, at least one of you, try to do what the other person enjoys, and then the other one also be willing to learn, what you enjoy. And that makes it much easier.
And again, this is something that you can do where you sit in front of each other and say, hey, let's create a list of 5 things individually of what we want the other person to engage in. So me and Waleed can sit at home and say, hey, okay, I'm going to write down 5 things I want you to, maybe do with me, and you can write 5 things you want. And then we share our list. So mine could indicate something like, hey, I want to play tennis together. I want to go hiking together. I want to be able to once a week, make a meal together. Like spending quality times in these different ways that are meaningful to me. And by sharing with him, now he doesn't feel like, oh, well, I didn't know I was supposed to behave in these ways or help you out, or these things were even important to you. So it's so important for us to communicate with one another what we're expecting, what's important to us. Because if we don't do that, and then we say, like, he doesn't care, like, all these things are important to me and he doesn't care, well, how is he supposed to know if you're not sharing it with him, or if you're not sharing it with her? So making sure that you're, sharing what's important for you, the activities you want your partner to
Definitely.
engage in, that way that your partner knows, and then you can't hold them accountable and say, well, you didn't know.
Definitely. And I think it's important that we give ourselves that time. As individuals, we always enjoy doing things, right?
Yeah.
For ourselves, makes us feel good. It's a form, let's say for number one, if you are somebody who is, who enjoys hitting the gym on a day-to-day basis, well, try to also get your, spouse or your husband involved with you. If not, 5 times a day, have them come at least 3 times a week. I said a day.
5 times a day.
5 days a week.
A lot of gymming.
Do three times a week. That allows you guys to learn more from each other, right? That gives you guys more time to bond. So these are small activities, and when we talk about activities that you and your partner need to do, the reason why we say that, and it's important that families know that it's always important to allow your child and your daughter-in-law to go out and have some time for themselves. And the reason why we say that is that within the household, everybody has limited time to how much time they can spend together, right? For instance, Lama John's busy with, full-time school, full-time work. I've got school, full-time work. So in doing that, even coming here, for instance, having a program together, that gives us time to talk to each other. That gives us time to see each other, and that's something that you should always have amongst each other. Or going out and doing grocery shopping, or going out, and trying to go hit the gym, because those little activities, or those small moments of time can make a big, long-term impact in a relationship too.
Yeah. So again, just to remind those who are joining us now, the topic of the day is the 5 love languages. So Willie John and I are going through the love languages and describing what they are. So far, we've covered 2 love languages, which was words of affirmation and then quality time.
Yeah.
And so now we're going to go ahead and go into the 3rd love language, which is gift giving. So the 3rd love language.
I think I'll stay quiet.
Is this not your love language? Receiving gifts.
So we'll go ahead and see what she has to say about receiving gifts, and then I'll give my input about giving
and I
gifts.
have to say, in the Afghan culture, I feel like this is a really big love language for a lot of Afghans, is receiving gifts, right? Because it's such a big part of our culture, even when it comes to engagements and marriages because I think when people get engaged in marriage, the family and the relatives are waiting to see what is the other side,
what's coming
what is the
to
other
us.
side gonna bring us, and like based on what kind of the quality of the gift, like indicates how much the groom or the girl's side likes the other family, right? So I think gift giving is actually a really.
And then once they are married, there's no more gift giving, guys.
That's not true.
Well, the individual becomes the gift.
There's a reason for an anniversary.
No. You didn't hear me. I said there's a reason why that individual then becomes the gift. So there's no need to give any more gifts, right?
We'll agree to disagree.
If you guys disagree or do agree, please give us a call and leave us a comment. So that's my thing, If she marrying me, for me, she was a gift, so she came in, and that's all,
Yeah. So with gift giving, what we have to look at, it's not just a materialistic thing, because sometimes we think of it as that way, like, oh, this person only enjoys gifts, all they care about is money, but it's not that. What it really is when a person goes out and buys you a gift, it's the thought that goes into it, right? So if I'm a wife and Waleed brings me a gift, for me what's important is, oh my God, he took the time out of his busy day to go to the store. Then he walked around the store and thought about all the things he could possibly get me. He focused on the colors I like, on the kind of jewelry I like, or the clothing I like. It's the taking the time to do it and thinking of you, and engaging in that act that becomes the meaningful part of the gift giving.
Yeah, definitely, and that's beautifully put together again and said, because giving is also a universal part of our life, and of a love relationship again between the household and individuals, and it's also a fundamental expression of love that that also crosses different cultures, and it actually brings 2 different cultures together as well. So that's the beauty of gift giving, and like you said, it's showing appreciation. It's not about money. It's not about how much money I have, or how much I want to spend or give this person, because you also don't want to spoil somebody or be able to misuse what you have to buy love. That's something else, or be able to have the only way to show love or express love is by doing gift giving, right?
Right.
So you don't want that. So that's why we're going through all of these different love languages, so you guys are better but you guys better understand that there's different elements of love languages, and this is just one part of it, and that's what we're trying to.
Well, and then the other aspect of it is, it's not, gifts don't have to be materialistic things. A gift can be the use of self as a gift, right? So me spending time with you, expressing my emotions to you, how much you mean to me, and how much our relationship matters to me, that in itself could be a gift that I'm giving you.
Absolutely.
And so we have to look at gifts in multiple different ways.
Definitely, and that's a beautiful way to put it, because that's your time. Time is valuable, and I think I personally think the best, and I think the most important thing in a human life is time. If you can give your time to somebody, that's the best form of gift that a person can ever give.
So I think we just figured out Willie's love language, which is quality time.
Quality time. That's because again, time is limited. No matter who you are in life, it's very limited. Your parents, you have yourself, your spouse, your children. Everybody has limited time, right? Material things can stay there, and you can you can pass it on in generations. You know, somebody buys property or home, you can pass it down.
Yeah.
You know, when you have somebody that's important in your life, you know, that you have parents, brothers, siblings, spouse, you know, it's limited time. So for that, you have to spend as much time as you can, because that's priceless.
Definitely. And then, so the other part of gift giving that we want to also focus on is something that's important in gift giving, whether it's yourself or you're going and purchasing something, is not just doing it on the anniversaries and feeling like you have to do it on every Valentine's Day, but really doing it when you see like your partner feeling down, being able to spend time and giving yourself as a gift when you see that your partner is feeling down or something's wrong, or giving them a gift when you see your partner working really hard, you know, and you know, they have so much to handle in their life, but they're still making time to, you know, do something for you and support you. So providing a gift in those times when, you know, they're not expecting it and it's almost like a surprise.
Definitely. And I think, you know, traditionally everybody is always wired or in tune with, you know, their anniversaries. You know, here living in the West, you know, we always look at, you know, Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
There's what is it? There's a lot of days, you know, like
Mother's
Day is Father's Day. So these are specific days that, you know, basically the you know, the society has come together and put together and agreed upon. But in reality, every day should be special. Every day should be a form of gift giving. And I think the most simplest way of doing that is, again, you know, giving time. You know, listening to an individual, your loved one, or even giving them, you know, small tokens, writing a letter to them, taking them out to, you know, to a restaurant,
cooking for them.
So these are very small steps that you can take in order to, you know, give appreciation.
Sure. So that was our third love language that we're going to go ahead and discuss. And then we're going to go ahead and come to our fourth love language for today. And again, the topic of our show today is the 5 love languages. And the 4 love language that we're going to go ahead and review is acts of service.
Sure.
And so do you want to tackle this one?
Sure.
Sure. Okay.
So again, act of service, right? Act of service is service one. You're doing service for your loved one. So basically, you know, act of service means doing things you knew your partner would like you to do. So knowing that, you know, if my partner, you know, if Lumbo John, you know, likes the fact that, you know, I go out.
Oh,
we have a caller. So let's pick up the phone and then we'll continue. Okay.
Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum.
Walaikum assalam. Before we get to the next topic, I just want to talk about the last one that we were talking about.
Sure.
Okay.
About
receiving gifts.
Sometimes we have to accept that we are different. So we have to accept our differences. For example, my husband doesn't like outside walking, hiking and all that, and I like that. But we accept it to respect each other's desire, and then I do walk, and then he doesn't have any problem with it. I found my groups and I go with them, and he likes something else that I do not like, but I accept it for him. I don't want him to change for me, and I do not want to change for him, but because in the meanwhile we have to do things that we enjoy as well. Definitely,
that is very important, and it's very true to also appreciate the fact that you know, when your partner doesn't you know, they have different habits, then we must appreciate that and also respect that in that sense as well.
Yeah, and sometimes, like at this age, I have a teenager child. We both have to pick up something that is a teenager is doing. So we're both sacrificing with things that we don't like, but we do it for sake of our child.
Can you give us an example? What is one thing that you do with, or you and your husband do for your together, and then what do you guys do together with your child?
Well, like he wants to go to some games that we don't even have football. We don't have any basic knowledge of American football. But we learned something about it. I learned some phrases even to use when they're playing that one. And he was Taekwondo, so I didn't know those things. So we learned something that to be in the same page with my son too. And sometimes we're so too tired from work, we come in, but we look at each other and we say, like, we have a child, we have responsibility, we cannot be tired. We have to go do something that he wants to do. We need to go to the movies, he wants to go. But if I do not want him to go with his friends, let us go with him to the movies. Things like that.
Definitely. And that's also a good way to put it too. Is that even when it comes to, so I think one of the things with parenting, important things of parenting is that also being involved with your child's daily activities, so that way you're involved with their daily life.
And even that is quality time.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's quality time. And
Yeah.
the time that we would learn about football or about the soccer or about something we're reading, that's the time too that we never knew before, and we have to know because of the culture different. These are things that we never had, things that we never had when we were their age. We would have completely different stuff, and they have completely different stuff now.
Definitely.
A lot of Star Wars I don't know about, but I have to learn about it. Okay, I cannot tell my son, well, because we didn't have it in our time, you shouldn't do it or shouldn't enjoy it.
Yeah,
But I have learned all these characters and Star Wars.
So can I say that you have a good knowledge of American football now? What's your favorite team?
I'm afraid to say it on time.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your call, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Perfect. So, acts of service. So, I think she actually did a really good transition for us for acts of service
Yeah.
because part of act of service is doing something that our partner does enjoy or family members enjoy. So, the caller that we had, Colin, talked about how for her son, Taekwondo is really important and football is very important.
Definitely.
And for her and her spouse, even when they come home and they're tired, because they know this is important for their child, they plan it into their schedules, right? They take the time, the effort, and the energy to be there, and that is an act of service towards their child.
Yeah. Basically, you're doing something for, for your loved one, and being able to do something that you want to be able to get to know them more or to get closer to them.
Yeah. Or and then like for even couples, this could be as simple as I like to go and volunteer on certain days, and if Willie sees that that's really important for me and that's something I really enjoy doing, an act of service that he can do is going and attending these volunteering services with me and assisting me.
Definitely.
Acts of service can also be, somebody assisting in the home, whether it's doing laundry or helping out with other aspects of the home or the work. If Willie has a really busy day and he's, preparing for a conference, me knowing that that's important to him and me telling him, hey, I'm available, let me know what I can do to help you out with this conference, whether it's printing flyers or doing something else, that's my act of service of, showing him like, hey, I care and I love you and this is how I want to assist you.
Absolutely. And I think that was the best way to put it. And I think even with our caller too, they explained it very well as well on what acts of services are. So again, brothers and sisters, so if you guys have any questions, if you guys want to give us any inputs, if you have any thoughts, please give us a call. Our number is on the screen, or you can give us your question or your thoughts or your inputs via Facebook as well. Type it and then we'll go ahead and then we will share that with our viewers as well.
Definitely. Okay, so should we continue?
Yeah, so let's continue. So one of the other things about act of service, I think the important part is that as two couples, before getting married, when you know each other and you're in that engagement period, you're willing to do so much for your partner, and what has happened over time is that once the two partners are together after a year or two, one or two, the partners kind of don't start doing things for the other. So whatever you used to do for your partner, you're now no longer doing, or you've kind of slowed down or stepped down your game, right? As people would say. So for that, remember that it's important that whatever you do prior, also make sure that you're staying consistent with what you have done prior to the marriage, because that shows that you're still trying.
Definitely.
Because if you do not, people get negative thoughts with negative interpretations, negative thoughts. Shaitan whispers in the ear, and then because of that, the relationship goes sour.
Yeah.
And then that's where you start questioning each other, and that's where love starts to fall apart.
And then something else that we have to also look at is sometimes acts of service is not a love language that a lot of us know about, and if it is a language that we know about, sometimes we will have stereotypes associated with that love language, because
Definitely.
acts of service, right? Even if we think about acts of service, what are they? So I mentioned some earlier, which is like, helping somebody do laundry or cooking or vacuuming or whatever it is, right? Sometimes when we think of these things, we may have been brought up to believe that there's a specific gender associated with that act, right? So if we're talking about laundry, right?
Yeah.
If I grew up in a home where my mother did the laundry always, am I then holding this belief that it's a woman's job? And if in your home cooking was something that was done only by your father, then in your mind is that an act that's only associated with the men? And so when we see two couples coming together or two partners coming together in a dyad, we have to have that conversation of, hey, what are some of these stereotypes that you may possibly have that are associated with these acts of service? And do you guys both agree on these stereotypes? Like in your home, if it was a father cooking, and in my home, it was a mother cooking, what is our belief then together as a couple about that act of service?
Definitely, and again, these are some, these are certain assumptions that people make as they get into marriage, right? Not knowing, because there's been time, I've known, I know a couple of folks, guys who, for example, enjoy cooking.
Yeah.
Or there's guys who actually live by themselves, and they don't have, they don't live with their parents, or they don't live with their, they're not married, but they cook. They, they have to cook, and then they enjoy, cooking,
Yeah.
as they, as they live by themselves. So these are important things that we do not realize or we do not know. So it's important that people talk about these specifics.
And then it's also important because, especially with our culture, sometimes, something that we see happening a lot in our community is, these stereotypes exist in all families. So let's go ahead and say there is a couple, who are helping each other in the kitchen and they have guests over to their house or doing a mehmani. Well, sometimes you may see the older generation saying like, oh, look at this girl, like she doesn't know how to do anything, or look at this guy, why is he in the kitchen so much? So it's also learning how to stand up for your relationship and then be able to express like, hey, there's nothing embarrassing about like me helping out my husband or me helping out my wife. Like this is like me showing love, and why wouldn't I do this for my spouse?
Definitely. And again, this is part of, as we're talking about, is what love language is that you got to show affection. Either it
Words
be
of affirmation.
words of affirmation, it'd be spending quality time, doing act of service. So these are all important factors that you have to take into consideration to ensure that you have a healthy and a sustainable relationship.
Sure.
Because at the end of the day, no matter what happens, what people say to you guys is that whatever goes on, it's just you and your partner at the end, at end of times. It will be you two will just get old. You guys will get old and you'll be together. So for that, just be very mindful of, when somebody says something, just know that you guys have each other's back. And in doing that, your relationship would be much easier and it would be much stronger in that sense. So if one person is not on board with, with the other, or the other is not on board with the other partner, then that relationship really becomes meaningless, and it becomes very difficult for you guys to maneuver, because in doing that, once you have kids, it becomes challenging, because then two parents are not seeing eye to eye, and then the child, as they get older, they fall into the same pattern where when they get married, when they get older, when they get married, they follow your same footsteps.
Right.
That's what happens.
Definitely. So we're gonna go ahead.
Let's talk about some tips of active
Definitely.
service as well.
And so this is kind of similar to what we discussed earlier again. So a lot of this is being able to communicate not only to one another, but also kind of sitting with yourself for a minute and trying to understand what is it that you want out of your relationship or out of your spouse. So we talked about, quality time and words of affirmation, making a list of best characteristics of your partner so you can affirm them on those characteristics. And then, quality time, creating a list of things that you want your partner to do with you.
Definitely.
So with acts of service, it could consist of you just sitting for a minute and writing a list of things that you want your partner to help you out with. And, also having limits to how much help you want, because you don't want to burn out your partner and say, every day I want you to do this many things for this many hours. But this could be, hey, once a week or once a month, I would really appreciate it if you could assist me with this certain thing.
Yeah. And then again, you can, write it down. For both of you guys can make it easy for yourself. And what you can do is, like, for instance, we can have a piece of paper. We can tear that piece of paper into 3 or 4 different little bits. Just write down what is it that you want your partner to do with you. So you write them down. Both of you fold the papers, put them in a jar, shake it, and then once a month just pick it up. And then whatever shows up, it's either something that I desired or you desired. And then based on that, we'll go ahead and do that work.
I think we should do that. That sounds like a great idea.
Why not? I think it's great.
I like that.
Because, it keeps consistency, and it also keeps you on track, right? It's like when people say, whatever you do, you always write it down. Even when you have goals, it helps you, to stay on track. Even this, with relationship too, a lot of people don't realize is that even when you're in a relationship, you have to write things down, and you have to create little habits that make it more impactful and meaningful.
And
for
you're
the
doing
boat.
it in a very fun and exciting way because it kind of turns almost into a little game that you play with your spouse of like let's see whose name comes out today or whose note gets out today, and so it teaches you how to be playful in your relationship, which is really important because we live in a society where we become really busy and stressed, and sometimes we forget to be playful in our relationship.
Definitely.
So
And
keeping it healthy and alive.
And I think it would be a great idea once we get home. We can probably do the same thing.
Definitely. Okay, so our fifth love language that we're going to go ahead and discuss today is physical touch. And this one is, we're going to kind of tweak it since we're talking to a lot of the Muslim and the Afghan community.
Yeah.
And talk about physical touch in an appropriate manner. And so in all cultures, physical touch is a very important part of every relationship, whether it's a relationship between a child and a mother. Something that we've learned through science is how important it is for a child to be, laying on his mother's chest
Definitely.
after the child is born, because they need that bonding period, because the mom is the closest person to that child, right?
Definitely.
So from the beginning of times, that physical touch has been so important.
And even now, just to add on to that before you go further, is that even in today's world, they've realized that there's a shortage of people that that need to hold children or infant children too. So what they've done is that they're actually having volunteers go out and hold babies on a daily basis. In order for their survival, they need a human touch. That's what babies need, is that another human's touch. And for that, they're always asking different abortion centers, or when they have what is it called, little like they've got charities, or in the hospitals, orphanages. They always ask people to come and volunteer, because if you don't touch or if you don't hold a child on a daily basis for a period of time, they can die.
I know, and that makes sense. And we also have to look at the fact that physical touch isn't the same when it comes from different type of people. So there was a study done by Gottman, and the study looked at like MRIs of a female partner who was getting like shocks. And so they did the study where they had a stranger hold the female partner's hand while she was getting shocks and looking at stress levels, as they were taking pictures and things. And then they had the female partner's spouse hold her hand while she was getting shocks, and they looked at the results of the study and the images, and it indicated that when the female partner's spouse was holding her hand, she wasn't as stressed, there was more relaxation within her body. So that tells us, like, that specific research tells us how much touch is important.
Definitely.
And how it's important for it to come from certain people, right? So when it comes from a stranger, you may not feel as relaxed as when it comes from somebody that you trust, and you feel loved by.
Yeah, definitely. So it's important that the last fifth love language is physical touch, no matter what happens, right? Even as husband and wives, if it means simply holding each other's hand, it is very powerful. And you would want to use it, or if it means being able to kiss your partner, or even kissing your children, or even your parents. Those are important factors of one of the signs of love languages that you should take into consideration, because that really allows an individual to know. Reason why I say it's to know that it's safe for them to be around that individual. And sometimes what happens is that other people are not verbal with their partner or their parents. So what ends up happening, they're more easily able to do physical touch than verbally speak to them, or share ideas, or have do act of service to them. So everybody is different. So in order to understand that there's 5 different languages of love languages, I think it helps, and it makes it easier for partners to have a better life in that sense.
Definitely. And then something else that we have to look at is there's so many different types of physical touch. A physical touch can also exist of, hugging your partner or hugging somebody that you love. And something that Willie John and I always talk to couples in our rooms about is not just a simple hug where, it's a 2-second hug, but doing a hug where you place your heart on the heart of the other individual, right? So you're hugging heart to heart, and you're holding that moment for a minute or 2 minutes and being very present in that moment and feeling each other's heartbeats.
Definitely.
Because, that kind of touch creates something magical in the room. It connects the two of you and makes you feel, how present you are, but also how vulnerable you are,
Definitely.
in the relationship. And I think that in itself is so beautiful, because you could be vulnerable with one another, and you can be fragile with one another.
And that's a good way to put it too.
Because that creates so much trust.
It does create trust, but at the same time, even with certain partners, they have an even harder time doing that as well. So in doing that, you can simply just, hold your partner's hand if it's very challenging, to even give them a hug, because certain partners are not comfortable, to hug their partners. So even as simple as holding their hands, and simply, then over time, getting comfortable and in tune with one another, then it makes it easier for them to, for both partners to come together and then to have that form of physical touch. So in doing that, what we can do is we can go on a quick break.
Sure.
And then when we come back, we'll go ahead and finish our discussion. We do have half an hour left, so if you guys have any questions, any thoughts, please give us a call or leave us any suggestions or questions on Facebook, please.
Definitely. Thank you.
حتم قندهاری و مزاری بخوان برار حتم قندهاری و مزاری بخوان برار لوز قلم نه صوت قناری بخوان برار لوز قلم نه صوت قناری بخوان برار حتم قندهاری حتم مزاری حتم قندهاری حتم مزاری لوز قلم نه صوتی قناری لوز قلم نه صوتی قناری حرفی بزن که دنبوره ها گل کنه بیرار دالی بزن که دنبوره ها گل کنه بیرار مردم هوای مندنی کابل کنه بیرار مردم هوای مندنی کابل کنه بیرار واسکت بغل کت یک دیگه خوب خور از نقل و غزل کت یک دیگه خوب شما پشت و پناهی باغ کشتید سلام علیکم علیکم نوشتید شما پشت و پناهی باغ کشتید سلام علیکم علیکم نوشتید تا نغمه گرشنو از تو خبر شنو تو هم سفر شنی آسوده درشن ای هم سفر ای هم سفر ای هم سفر ای هم سفر بینداری نیک خانه را مقبول کنه بیرار بینداری نیک خانه را مقبول کنه بیرار مردم هوای مندنی قبول کنه بیرار مردم هوای مندنی قبول کنه بیرار زمینا سوز و پور با روشن باز سرک ها رای دلدار روشن باز لبای هر پکیره گل بکاری سبد ها پر کنی دوبری بیاری لبای هر پکیره گل بکاری سبد ها پر کنی دوبری بیاری کورتونی هان شنه دل مهربان شنه شابا شنه سفید و بختا جوان شنه شما شنه سفید و بختا جوان شنه بینداری نیک خانه را مقبول کنه بیرار مردم هوای مندنی قبول کنه بیرار مردم هوای مندنی قبول کنه بیرار حتم قندهاری حتم مزاری حتم قندهاری حتم مزاری لوز قلم نه صوتی قناری لوز قلم نه صوتی قناری قدم قندهاری قدم مزاری لوز قلم نه صوتی قناری گلی بزن که تنبوره ها گل کنه بیرار مردم هوای مندنی قبول کنه بیرار مردم هوای مندنی قبول کنه بیرار.
Welcome back, dear brothers and sisters. So we're back from our break, and we wanted to go ahead and discuss and talk about what we had. We had a couple of questions that we have had during the break. And do you want? Should read it?
Before we go into the questions, we kind of want to review why we were going ahead and discussing the 5 love languages today. And one of the reasons why we wanted to go ahead and discuss this is because I think in our community not so many people know about the 5 love languages, and it can be very problematic when you don't know your love language. So the reason why it can be problematic is if we have different love languages. So for example, if I'm an individual who knows that my love language is gift receiving, and Willie's love language is not gift giving or gift receiving, it could be problematic to my relationship, because if he doesn't know that that's what makes me feel very appreciated, in our relationship, he's not engaging in those ways to give me gifts, and then I, tell myself, oh, he doesn't care about me, he doesn't appreciate me, he doesn't give me
start
anything
assuming
to show
things
me.
And
Exactly.
becomes problematic in the long term for the guys.
So it's so important for us to be able to, understand each other's love languages, so we don't create those false assumptions about one another and then cause hurt in our relationships.
Definitely. And one of the other, the second part of, love language was, to be able to give yourself quality time together. And then when you do have this quality time together, the spouse and the husband, wife and the husband sit down and they talk about, what's important for them. What are their likes? What are their dislikes? And then based on this, you make, proper arrangements for each other. Because if you don't do this, or if you don't know the 5 love language fully, then it can become a little difficult, as it can be for others.
And it's, we see a lot of couples coming into our offices, and I also see a lot of families coming into my office, especially parents and kids. I've had so many daughters and fathers and daughters and mothers come into my office and talk about, my daughter hates me, or my mother hates me. She doesn't do the things that show me that she loves me. She doesn't tell me she loves me. And I think that's another really big problem that we have today. And even, I seeing some families and the kind of cultures that they have and the traditions they have, not every family describes, says words of affirmation.
The same way.
A lot of families don't say, hey, I love you, you're meaningful to me, or let me give you a hug and show you that I love you.
Definitely.
For example, in my home, it was a given. It was a given that I'm loved because I have a roof over my head, I have, clean clothes, I have everything that I need, and those were signs of love. And that was my family's love language. So for me, it was really important to understand that and to know that. Some families are different, and, the European society and the white society, love languages can be seen as words of affirmation. Hey, I love you. Hey, son, come here. Let me give you a hug. But in the Afghan culture, we may not see that. We may not see a father and a son being, very affectionate through touch with each other.
Definitely. And then I've had, fathers and sons who've had really bad relationships, later time in their lives when the son turns 22 or 24. I've seen a disconnect between the two, and reason why that happens is that the son comes in at this age and says, I just don't want to listen to my father, I don't want to see my father, anything he says I just dislike.
Yeah.
And the reason why that happens is that from a very young age, the father was more like an authoritative figure, where he just basically told the son what to do without showing any form of love, giving any hugs, or taking him out anywhere. He was basically telling his son, the way he learned how to treat your son was, just give him in command.
Yeah, so it's a
just
pattern.
basically command your kid, right? So later on, just so I can complete it, so later on, as the son grows older, for him, now that the father is starting to open up more, he's trying to, have conversation with his son, it feels weird for the son, and he feels like, oh, this is not safe.
So
everything that my father says is a lie. But in reality, when I sit with the father is like, I love my son, I want to, do better for our relationship, but for the son at this time and point, he says, whatever he says, it's a lie, and I don't believe him.
Well, and we have to look at again, what context do we live in? What context do our children live in? So if for this son, when he was young, if his context consisted of, going to a school where, he would see his friends getting picked up by their parents, and the parents would hug them and kiss them and ask them about their day, and engage in ways that, this son may particularly have not experienced in his own life, where he's like, my dad doesn't hug me, and my dad doesn't kiss me, doesn't act in these ways. When he compares the two, he may feel like, oh, okay, my friend's parents must really love him, And
because
my
they're
dad may
always
not.
there.
Yeah.
And one of the other things that I've noticed, primarily with with the Afghan community and certain other people too, because of the busy schedule or not knowing how to be involved in your child's life, I've seen like there's a disconnect because parents are not able to understand the importance of going to a child's game or going to a child's after school debate team, your competition games. Those are important because when you go there, you usually see who?
Yeah.
Parents. So you see parents cheering for their kids and for your kids. But then your child eventually looks back and sees, that nobody's there to support them from the family side.
Sure.
And in doing that, it becomes a little bit of a difficulty there.
And you can definitely apply this to relationships and couples as well, because we both see a lot of couples coming into our offices and talking about how important it is for them, for each partner to spend time with their own family, right? So sometimes we see a lot of couples coming in and complaining about, like, I really want to spend time with my family, they mean so much to me, but my husband refuses to do so, and it's because he's refusing to do so, that means he doesn't love me, he doesn't care about me, he doesn't appreciate me. So you could also apply the same context into a relationship. If that's what's so important for your spouse, and you have to take that into consideration, because when that's important for them and they look to you for approval and for support and you're not giving that to them, they feel betrayed. They feel like, oh, you must not really love me, and this is why what's important to me is not important to you.
Absolutely. And stuff like this does come across because, a good example is, where husband and wife, where the wife would want to go to their parents' house where the husband just doesn't go, right? Mm-hmm. And this is where the wife starts, thinking that, this, my husband does not love me, does not support me. But then again, from his end, what does she know?
Mm-hmm.
Is there something that's cultural? Is there something where for him it's not right to go and visit his in-laws' house? There's different things. We just have to be able to sit with him and be able to speak to him and communicate.
Yeah.
Which sometimes can be very problematic because we've seen situations where wives try to ask questions from the husbands. The husbands are just quiet and they don't answer any questions, which is sometimes becomes problematic because they're just like, you have to speak too,
right.
Or sometimes it's the opposite, where the husband's trying to get the wife to understand certain things that the wife doesn't want to listen to, certain situations that doesn't want to come on board with the husband because of some form of a grudge. So there's always these problematic stuff where a husband and wife really needs to sit and talk and discuss these important matters.
Definitely. So as Willie John had mentioned earlier, while we were on break, we got a few messages, and they requested us to not indicate their names since they wanted to remain anonymous.
Then we got
we'll get a call and then we'll go to the messages then.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum.
وعلیکم السلام رحمت الله. ماشاءالله ازیتان قدر نورانی معلوم میشین، مخصوصا بعد از سفر عمریتان و ماندن باشین.
بسیار تشکر، زنده باشین.
برنامه‌تان همه روزه، یعنی برای ما از بیننده ها و خواهر و برادرها تبریکات خود و نظریات نیک خود روان میکنن بر تلویزیون. براتون تبریک میگم.
بسیار تشکر.
موضوع امروز شما را که شما بحث میکنین بسیار یک موضوع مهم است که چه قسم زن شوهرها یا یک فامیل محبت دوستی خود را به چه شکل نشان بدن. همه یک هدف دارین
بله.
اوکی. و در قسمت زن و شوهرها you belong to a different generation، یعنی شما بیخی یک نسل دیگه هستین.
بله.
و ما کسای دیگه که از شما یک چند دوره قبل بودن، مخصوصا در افغانستان، showing love to your wife, especially in public and in front of your mother, parents, it's not یک چیزی است که هیچ میشرمن یا علاوه بر از او فکر میکنن که شاید پدر و مادر یا مادر مخصوصا جلد شود یا به هر شکلی، یا بعد اوقات به نام غیرت افغانی نمیخواین نشان بدن. حتی یعنی ما شاهدش بودیم که زن و شوهرایی بودن که بسیار با هم دوستی و محبت داشتن، اما شاید در وقتی که در بین فامیل نبودن اما محبت خود نشان میتن، اما در پیشروی پدر و مادر اینا نشان نمیتن. و حتی در مقابل اطفال خود، اولادای خود، زن و شوهر کوشش میکنن که زیاد نشان ندن که یکی دیگر مثلا بغل بزنن یا ببوسن یا کاری که یعنی شما امروز یک نسل هستین که چیزا را پروموت میکنن، میگن که بسیار تاثیر میکنن سر اولادا و همچنان از نظر اسلامی هم یک زن و شوهری که با هم محبت نشان میتن این کاری نیست که خلاف دین و عقیده ما باشه.
بله.
ولی it's just different generation and like we were not comfortable to do that in front of our families and especially parents and public.
بله بله.
اما چیزی که شما امروز میگین I really agree with you. اقلا برای یک خانواده سالم باید که زن و شوهر محبت خود نشان بدن که به چی شکل هر کدامشان و شما متفاوت شد. مثلا لمبجان گفت بسیار خوش داره که برش توفه داده شد دیگه، ولی جان یکم ذره توفه کوشش کنید که زیادتر سر توفه کار کنید و خود ولی جان هم اگر بسیار خوش داره که اوسانه و بعضی چیزهای دیگه که اونا خوش دارن شما به او رسیدگی میکنید و همین شکل یعنی تاپیکتان بسیار یک تاپیک خوب است و امیدوار هستم که بیننده های ما و کسایی که شما را برنامه را میبینن اگر بر زبان دری و پشتو هم اگر سوال داشته باشن میتونن تماس بگیرن و امی موضوع را کمک سرش صحبت کنن.
بله
بسیار تشکر.
بسیار تشکر از تلفن کردنتون. بسیار یک چیز گپ خوب گفتن که در وقت دیگه دوستا که هستن که از ما که سنشان کلانتر است یک وقت دیگه بود که چطور یا که زن و شوهر چطور که دیگه خود میشینه گپ میزنم. ما خود ما هم که هستیم چیز نمی کنیم که حالا در پیشوی پدر خود ملنبه جان بگیرم یا ببوسم، این کار بازم نمی کنیم. بازی خاطر بازم یک احترام است که و مادر پدرمشان که هستن و در این یک محیط کلان شده که این چیزا نمی میشد در بین زن و شوهر و نمو خاطر ما چیز نمی کنیم، مگر ما می خواهیم بگوییم که بازم اگر که در پیشروی مادر و پدر یک زن و شوهر باشه باید ما بتانم بگویم بسیار تشکر دیر مننه لمبا جان. یک گپ است که باید بگویم که یک فامیلیم بفهمه که یک فامیل است دیگه. این گپ باید شود اما بین زن و شوهر دیگه. ایتون دوستا هم هستن بله که زن خود میگیره در پیشروی دیگه مردم یا شوهر خود باز افغانا زیادتر وقت بد میبینه. به یک حد باید ما هم باید مراد کنیم صحیح است یک نسل جوان ما هم هستیم مگر ما هم کم ذره شرم داریم، باید کم ذره لیازش باید ما هم چیز کنیم بفهمیم که به یک قدم یک چیز لیمیت داره خودش هم که کس بفهمه.
و بلا خبر ده هم ده چه منگا مخی ساکی ویل چه دیر رقم واری چه تکاشق پر مینی یو چات او خی کنه یو دسته ده چه ته یو توفه یو چات ورکی بل دسته ده چه د مینی خبری وکی مگم در یو لیمیت پوری کنه اسکه استامور پلارز من کورکی دی اوزه ورم چه در تمینه و خیم زکاشم استامور پلارت است صفاتو کم کنه دام یو مینه چه دا ود زوی صفاتو کم چه او دا دیر کار کی دا دیر کمک کی دا مکتب تمزی دا دیر قصد خ انسان دا کنه او تنکش چیز ما صفاتو که او دام یو مینه دا کنه
نیامت باید تو هم که ما خصاتی نسم خدک دا کورتا رازم کالیمی خصایی هغه دی مزایم جوړ دی او د خوشاله ما دا ټول هغه کې دی د مینی خبرې دي دا هم باید کولای شي یو انسان.
So thank you so much for that call. We always appreciate, hearing different perspectives and hearing perspectives from different generations as well, because, as our caller had mentioned earlier, we're speaking from a younger generation, and it's always important for us to know, what are the generations that are above us and maybe even generations below us, even though, we are pretty young too, so I don't know if the generation below us has any different thoughts than us.
They should. They have. They probably have different thoughts. The generation even above us in their 40s, they have their own thoughts.
Definitely.
And that's okay, right? I mean, everybody has life differently played out.
And different experiences.
And as we said earlier, even for us, growing up here and being born, in the West, it is different, for us. We don't, even I find it a little bit, not too well, if I'm in front of my parents and just hold my wife 24/7 or just kind of show affection just by holding her and kissing her. To me, that also is a form of I need to, kind of step back and lower my gaze in a sense where, yes, there is a privacy, where my wife and I can, talk to each other, or I can hold her. But when it comes to my parents or other people, it's very limited. Like Lambo John stated earlier, things that you can do, or I can do, is I can always, compliment you in front of your
me.
parents or my
Yeah.
parents and say, wow, she's an amazing wife. She takes care of me. I'm very happy with her. So these are a form of affection, So you don't have to do all 5 love languages in front of people to show them
Yeah.
how much you love them. All of these 5 different languages are meant to be implemented at certain times and at different places for a certain period, for different purposes.
Right.
So you have to remember, you have to know the timing, you have to know who's there and what kind of love language you can, utilize there. So it all plays differently.
Definitely. And one of the questions that we had actually, during the break was, how do you figure out your love language? And the reality is, you may have one specific love language. All these 5 love languages may not be your language. You may have one that's 100% your love language, or 90% your love language, and another that might be like 10%, or a different percentage that you best like. So for example, I could have a love language that is quality time majority of the time, but then I could also have another love language that's acts of service, and then the other 3 may not be so high on my preferences.
Definitely.
And so the individual who had contacted us and asked us, how do I figure out my love language? And the way you can do it is it's as simple as going to Google and just typing in the 5 love language quiz. And once you go ahead and type that in, a link will pop up and you click on that and you answer a bunch of questions, and they will ask you different things, like they will ask you to choose, between 2 to 4 options. Like, would you prefer more somebody spending time with you, or somebody giving you a gift? Somebody doing X or somebody doing Z? And so based on your responses, it calculates all your answers and then adds them up. So it says, how many of the responses that you have add up to quality time? How many of your responses add up to acts of service? How much of your responses add up to words of affirmation? And whatever section has the most responses basically indicates that that's your strongest love language.
Yeah.
So again, you can just go to Google and type in 5 love language quiz, and then it will go ahead and show you a link and a quiz that you can fill out, and then it will let you know what your love language is. And
Perfect.
I would actually recommend for your whole family to do it. How amazing would it be for you to know as a family, hey, what is my love language? What is my father-in-law's love language? What is my husband's love language? And how do we communicate
with each other, right? Because the reason why we wanted to do the 4 communications, so I'll talk about that, and then the love languages, we want to be able to connect the 2. And then based on this, once you find out, knowing what's your love language, what's your wife's, your children, your parents', your grandparents', and then based on that, you learn, how can you guys better communicate with each other, because that will then give you a better idea and a platform, to be able to use to have healthy communication style amongst one another.
Yeah. And then so we
should go to
also,
the next question.
yeah, we also got a message from, again, somebody who's anonymous and has requested us not to mention their name. And this individual sent us a long message, but it kind of sums up to this question, or the statement of, this individual tries to spend quality time with her spouse, but because they live with their in-laws, she has indicated that her in-laws don't understand that she and her spouse need quality time outside of the family. And they've tried to basically explain this to the family, but it hasn't worked out, and she's asking us for assistance on how she can go ahead and help her in-laws understand, or maybe have her husband have his parents understand that a certain time a week they need some quality time on their own.
Definitely. So number one, I think one of the ways you can do that is you got to talk to your partner first. So talk to your husband regarding, and pertaining to, you wanting to spend some time with her. So in doing that, your husband needs to also, understand the importance of, both of you spending quality times together. So depending on, if it looks like, let's say if it's a form of you two doing something together within the house, great. If not, if you guys want to get out of the house, what the husband needs to do is he needs to have a conversation with his own parents, and then having that having that conversation, there's also a direct and more of what is it called? So there's more of a result that they would be able to get a proper result, and then the parents would obviously be able to learn more, understand better from the child. It would make it easier for you, because then that way it doesn't seem like you want to just get out and have a good time, but it means that it shows that both, the son and the daughter-in-law wants to go out and have a good time. So knowing that it's something that's also coming from the son, this choice, then the parents are more understanding, and then they'll realize that, what, it's important for these two couples to go out and have some time of their own.
Yeah, and what I would suggest for you to do is actually go ahead and read up on your Islamic rights, because we have this very beautiful religion which talks to us about what is a parent's right, what is a wife's right, what is a husband's right. And the beautiful thing about religion is the fact that as a wife, for example, I'll use myself as an example, my relationship with Waleed, my wifely relationship with him cannot replace his relationship with his parents. They have their own place in our life, and I have my own place in our life.
Definitely.
And the beautiful thing about religion is our religion is so just, right? And it talks about that. It talks about how, parents can replace a spouse, and a spouse can replace a parent, and we need to respect both, but we need to create just. So we need to create time for the parents, and we need to create time for the spouse. So if you're in a situation where, your parents or your in-laws are telling your spouse or telling you, hey, no, you're not allowed to go and spend time without us, it is your husband's duty in that example to talk to his parents in a loving and a kind way and saying, Mom and Dad, I love you so much, but you can't, the advice you're giving me is wrong, because this is my spouse and I have duties to her, and as my spouse, my duty to her is to spend quality time with her.
Definitely.
So being able to explain that, because again, I always say when you use religion in the right manner and you use scripts from the Quran, anybody who's a believer will not be able to argue with that.
Definitely. And it's important that you have that conversation with your parents, especially as a guy, because parents eventually will learn and understand, right? There's certain parents, certain families that I've noticed that are very much traditionally very, they use traditions very strongly. So for them, it's more of like shame and honor involved in it. So if you're coming from a family that's, that's living in a circumstances in that sense where, that household is powerfully or mainly driven based on traditions and culture, so it is going to be a more difficult. So even if you use a form of Islam, it will not work
because they're more
too much to your advantage there, right? So then what you want to do is, even though you're within the household boundaries, you want to be able to utilize ways and forms to, to have more time with your husband, a different way, even within the household, or even when you guys do go out, because what I've noticed in these situations is that even as husbands, that are morely traditional, instead of, using the Islamic verses, I've seen that there is not too many changes, which I feel bad for the wife here. And then sometimes I feel bad for even the husband, because the husbands feel trapped within the same household. So in that sense, it becomes very difficult. So number one, you would need to talk to your husband and then teach them Islamic rights first before you teach the parents, because your husband needs to learn that first, because he would be the one to be able to take those initial steps towards opening those conversations, right? So that's the number one step that you can do there.
Yeah, no, that's a really good example that you mentioned and advice that you gave. So the last question that we got for today has been around, how can I teach healthy love languages to my kids? And I would say the best way to teach a healthy language to your kids is by being a role model of the language. So you acting in ways like, our caller had indicated, me and my spouse are so tired when we get home, but I know football is important for my son, and I know karate is important for my son. So even though we're tired, we go ahead and we plan that into our day, we schedule it in, we make the effort to show up and be there for him. That's how you teach your child the quality of the love language and how to engage in that love language, because you're being a role model, and kids are like sponges. Throughout their childhood, they're looking at you and they're just absorbing everything that you're doing. Yes, exactly. So the way you can teach your child a healthy love language, whatever love language it is by enacting it. So by acting with, appropriate tone of voice when you're showing love and affection and you're speaking words of affirmation, by spending quality time, by making direct eye contact, by, asking about the other person's day. And you can do that with your child. Hey, how was school? What did you learn today? Tell me the best part about your day. Tell me the worst part about your day. Tell me about something you want to do this weekend. Like, making them feel like they're a very important part of the conversation. So you're spending quality time with them by having those conversations, by engaging in things that they enjoy doing, by asking them to engage in things you enjoy doing, spending family time together.
Definitely, and I think everything that you just stated, was all correct. And with my opinion, my advice was going to be the same exact thing, was to be able to make time with your child. Whatever you do, your child is going to mimic, and they're going to learn from you.
Definitely.
Reason why they do that is that a child's most influential, and not just that, but role model, as we say, is parents.
Mm-hmm.
They are the first people, in front lines of children. Our parents who actually are able to model. Children will model their parents, no matter what it is, what you do, what you say. They will learn from you.
They'll copy
so
you.
they'll copy you. So no matter what you do, they'll learn from you. So it's easier, and it makes more sense that whatever you do, you be very thoughtful of it.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever actions you take, make sure that it reflects back. So the way I usually look at this, and I always tell myself, is that it's like a plan that you have to make, right? Even in life, when you're in a relationship, or even when you are in a relationship, even for yourself as an individual, what do? We always write down our goals: 5-year goal, 10-year goal, 10-year plan. When we are in a marriage, also have the same plan. What do you guys want to do in 5 years? What do you guys want to do in 10 years? For us, it's like, okay, finish our PhD, then hopefully next step would be get a house. Like, those are our plans. When you have kids, same thing. What is the parents' plans for your child? And then also you want to be able to write down their 10 to 20-year plan that you want to have for them. It's like a vision that you want to create for them,
And how you support
and how
them
you
in
want to
it.
support them. But at the same time, you have to plant the seed earlier on for these, for your children. So no matter what you do, you have to remember that these are going to be things that are going to create, or that are going to make your child 20 years from now. So these are very important factors
Definitely.
to look into.
So again, today we discussed the 5 love languages, and we hope that you guys enjoyed this topic. We are up on our time for today, so we will see you guys next Sunday, inshallah, at 11 a.m. If there's a specific topic that you guys want us to cover, please go ahead and send us a message, and we'll do our best to go ahead and prepare for that topic.
Definitely. So again, if any questions that you guys have, please message us on Facebook or give us a call. Our number is on the screen. We enjoy coming here on a weekly basis and discussing important factors on a day-to-day matters that take place within our communities. We enjoy doing this. I love coming here and discussing and talking about psychoeducation, and that's something that Lamba John and I we really much enjoy. It's our passion, and we want to be able to help our community, and also be able to learn from you guys. So like I said earlier, anything that we say here, we want you to take ownership of it, because this service is for you guys. So in order for you guys to take part, is to give us a call, and in doing that, we will better be able to serve you in that sense as well. So that is it from my end. So are we good to go?
We're good to go, so we will see you guys, inshallah, next Sunday at 11 a.m.
Sounds good.
Pacific time.
Assalamu alaikum wa
Assalamu alaikum.
rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.